and a warm welcome to you all. On behalf of the BSP School of Accountancy and Management, and on my own behalf as the CEO of the BSP School, let me invite you to join me to wish a very special welcome to our distinguished and world-renowned Professor Michael Porter from the University of Harvard. It is well accepted worldwide that Professor Porter is recognized as the foremost authority on strategy and competition. His seminal and groundbreaking work on competitive strategy and his 5 forces model have acted like a beacon to governments, business leaders, and captains of industry, to academia and students across the world for several decades now. The sterling contribution that Professor Porter has made in the field of strategy and competition have the merit to be practical and have illuminated to this day the path of many all over the world. The complete world-class achievements of Professor Porter would be too long for me to mention here. So we have included in your information kit the essentials of the biography of Professor Porter for your appreciation. We are indeed honored and pleased to have succeeded in bringing Professor Porter to our shores. When the BSP School made its public announcement that, as its initiative, Professor Porter would be coming to Mauritius to give a conference, there was a general disbelief. Some thought it was but impossible, considering that all previous efforts made by a very important institution as early as the 1990s had unfortunately not materialized. Others thought it was going to be a video conference, yet others brushed it aside as a joke, a sort of a one-day extension to April Fools. Professor Porter is today very much among us in flesh and bones, and the BSP School is very reason to be legitimately proud of this feat. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me here to quickly share with you the lasting influence my own university studies of the works of Professor Porter have had in my professional life. Many of you here are familiar with the memorable 5 forces model of Professor Porter and his precious business prescriptions relating to differentiation, cost leadership, focus, distinct value chain, continuity, trade-offs, and positioning. As the CEO entrusted with the responsibility to set up the BSP School of Accountancy only 3 years ago, I had a first-hand experience on the Porterian approach as a practitioner, if I may say so. In building up the BSP group of companies, I had to maneuver in a very competitive business environment, and it is our appreciation of the insights of differentiation strategy and of the principles of positioning that helped us to carve a comfortable niche in the knowledge services sphere. In short, our game plan was distinct in that we tapped into a pool of the best lecturers in accountancy in Mauritius and abroad, with the aim of delivering a higher level of value at an affordable price to address competition. Bearing in mind that trade-offs are inevitable, we ensure that all the constituent parts of our enterprise were closely knit as they still are today. We stood out in the crowd with strong differentiation features relating to competition. We have never ceased to observe the principle of continuity. We are rigorous, vigilant, we watch the evolving education landscape, we learn, we engage passionately and with determination with our customers in order to continuously offer them a set of unrivaled education services. With this approach, we saw within a short period of 3 years only, our enrollment figures skyrocketing to 3,000 students, which is commendable by local standards, survival and sustainability during tough and testing times. To face these difficulties, more and more countries are being challenged. To place growing emphasis on quality and creativity and innovations, on reforms, and on value of openness, equity and justice. They are joining regional blocks of cooperation in order to compete in an increasingly liberalized international arena, clamoring for free trade and for level playing fields, and characterized by emerging protectionist blocks. Building competitive advantage, therefore, remain a major challenge, be it for a country or for a regional organization. In our country, there has been, and there still is, a slow transformation to an economic level playing field, and to a more equitable economy aiming at creating windows of opportunities for the budding entrepreneur and for the small and medium enterprise, against what has been described or perceived to be conservative and historically entrenched mindsets. On the other hand, and I say this in all fairness, those major and leading industry players who have traditionally created wealth for the country have contributed immensely to create a national brand of entrepreneurship for Mauritius, with vision, determination, business acumen, and a capacity over the decades to meet major challenges. The state has unfailingly been a great facilitator in this historical process. This combined public-private sector partnership, in spite of its occasional controversies, together with the entrepreneurial and combative spirit of our people, have conferred upon our island an advantage that has served us well, and earned a certain recognition and a leadership position in the region. The transformation of the economy towards greater openness and equity is a most welcome but most formidable challenge to us all. Be it now or in the foreseeable future, in recent years we have set up a competition commission and an equal opportunity commission, which are important steps forward, although we are still have a long way to go.
A profound role, not just in narrowly being business, but in being business in a way that actually can drive progress in society. And I've written a number of articles about this, and there's a movement all around the world for business to kind of change the way it thinks about its role in society. And that's the third presentation that I will talk about after lunch. Now, these three presentations, they're fat. They have a lot of slides, they have a lot of data. I'm going to cover them in this seminar, in this session today, in this conference. But I'm also going to make sure that they're all available to all of you. So anybody here that's interested in these presentations, will make it possible for you to get those. Because again, my goal today is not just to have an academic seminar. My goal today is for every one of you this afternoon or tomorrow morning to start doing something differently. That's the goal here. I think these documents will hopefully give you intellectual architecture for thinking about how to take your business, and for those of you with the limited time that we have, we'll talk a little about how to take the country forward, and how to change our role in society in business, how to make business even more important as a force for change in the society. So that's the goal for today. Again, very ambitious. Forgive me for all this material. I'm going to talk maybe faster than I should, but you know, we only have this day. We only have this day. We've got to use it to the max. Well, but not great. There's a series of slides here. This is your GDP per capita growth versus your level, your clearly a upper middle income country, but in terms of the growth of GDP per capita, it's not growing unusually fast. You're in the middle of the pack. If we went back a few years, you would be better, but I think it's getting harder to sustain this high level of growth. This has to do with your labor productivity. You've got to create a more productive economy if you're going to raise your standard of living and be competitive. And Mauritius is getting more productive. This is labor force productivity versus GDP per capita. There's a very strong relation. If you're growing labor productivity rapidly, you tend to be growing GDP per capita rapidly. And you can see that, again, we're sort of in the middle of the pack. And in fact, we're not growing labor productivity that fast, relative to other countries that we should be able to do well with. We are improving labor participation. The percentage of working age people that are actually in the labor force has been going up. That's very, very good. It's very powerful. That's something that's going the opposite direction in many countries. So that's working. But the improvement in labor productivity and overall GDP per capita is really only in the middle. In order to understand this performance, we like to dig down and look at some of the underlying components that drive productivity. In terms of investment, we are a kind of medium investment economy in terms of investment as a percentage of GDP. But you can see where our investment is not growing as rapidly as we would like to see it. So this is a bit of an indication that there's something holding us back. In terms of exports, this is a high export economy. As a percentage of our GDP, that reflects our long heritage, starting with the sugar business and so forth. But you can see in terms of, are we gaining export share in terms of GDP? Are we getting more export intensive or less? Well, we're stopped. Whereas you can see other countries here on the right that are improving their capacity to export as a proportion of their GDP. You are good at importing. You're rapidly improving imports, and that's creating this imbalance that we see. Again, imports aren't bad. You want to import the stuff that you can't do productively, but there obviously needs to be a balance. So you need to develop the capability within your economy to create a kind of good relationship between the imports and the exports. Here is inbound foreign investment. Mauritius has gotten a fair amount of inbound foreign investment, but if you look, broadly compared to a lot of other countries, this says that we are actually not a very large foreign investment attractor, certainly for a company of our size, our country of our size. And we're not. I mean, China, is so huge that, and you see some other, but we would hope to be more like a Costa Rica or Hungary or a country like that in terms of we should be attracting more foreign investment. Just given the size of the country and given how many other things are going well in terms of the business environment, the legal system, the openness and all that kind of stuff. So there's a message here that we have to kind of understand. So how do we think about the drivers of competitiveness? Well, kind of here's the general framework that's evolved from my work in this area over the last 15 or 20 years and work with many, many countries. Basically, competitiveness comes from three layers in a society, in a country. The kind of base layer is your endowments. Endowments are things that look like this. And I think the first thing I should say is this is a very nice picture. This is good. What this says is that compared to the countries that we have data for, 140 of those countries, your rank in GDP is 58. but your rank in competitiveness is 37. That's good. That means that there's some inherent competitiveness here that should allow you to rise in the GDP per capita standings. Now, what would be, what we see in a lot of other countries is their GDP rank is 50 and their competitiveness is 70. And that means they're living on borrowed time. They're going to have a hard time sustaining the standard of living. So you've got the right kind of picture here. What this says is that you've got some weaknesses in macro policy. You've got sort of less kind of robustness in human development. Pretty decent business environment, but company capabilities and company operations in this country, I think, are a little bit behind, again, where we need to be. Okay, so this is what this data is showing us. Now, what I've included here is a set of slides that go down into the details of the country's position in all of these areas. And I'm not going to cover them. I'm not going to, I'm going to just pass through the slides very quickly. All this data. In terms of the business environment, here's how we look at the business environment. The factor inputs, the related industries available, the context in which companies compete. And then the other key piece of this framework is the notion of clusters. What we find is that if you want to have a high determination in the global economy, what's our value proposition? Why would anybody do business here? In what fields do we have some potential unique strength that we can build on? Because of our endowment, because of our existing clusters, because of our heritage, our culture, our history, our openness, our relationship with Africa. We have to kind of answer the question of, where do we fit in the global economy, in the regional economy, in the African economy? Where do we fit? And we have to be realistic about that, given our size, given our existing kind of capabilities and what we can build over time. And if we can kind of conceive of that national value proposition, which the great success stories in economic development have, like Singapore and others, then we start understanding what are those critical policy areas that we have to deal with in order to achieve this vision for the country's position in the region and the world. And then what are the things that we just have to get better at, but we don't have to be unique at? Okay? Part of economic development, there's a lot of things that affect economic development. The roads, the schools, the healthcare system, the incentives, the financial system, hundreds and hundreds of things affect competitiveness. And really what's critical for a country that's going to move ahead is to kind of figure out what are the things that we have to really work on now. The typical economic plan for a country has 75 priorities. We're going to fix that, 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 we're going to fix that. There's a long, long list and all the things that anybody can think of that are weaknesses in front. But that's not a good economic plan. An economic plan understands that for the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to focus on these things because they're the real constraint. And then after that, we'll move to this and this and this and this. And that's realistic, and that's something we can achieve and accomplish. So part of the strategy part is figuring out where we're going to put our effort and our capital, our resources. What are the things really holding us back given where we are today? What are the things, and then we have to have sort of a longer-term vision of where we need to go, and then we can stage our choices over time. And